In the book fandom, there has been talking about the way Meg could very well be played by a plus-size actress because she's described to be plumpy. The fact that Meg in the book is considered to be the most beautiful of the March sisters, and that she is a plus-size woman, what a great example that would be for people today who watch a Little Women adaptation. But it is the same with Anne of Green Gables. Hollywood has not made a version where Meg or Diana Barry have been played by plus-size actresses. Let's face it, most people don't know that Meg is described this way in the original material. Another thing about Jo is that she has tanned skin because she likes to spend time outside. In the 19th century, brown skin was not considered attractive at all, because it was a sign that you worked outside a lot, which meant that you were lower class, and if you didn't need to work, you spent more time inside. Then we of course have Laurie, who is half Italian in the book.
Sponsor of this episode is Etsy. On Etsy you can start your own shop and reach their millions of customers. With the link in the description, you can add your first 40 listings for free. Our second sponsor is bookshop.org. Bookshop.org works to connect readers with independent booksellers all over the world. They believe local bookstores are essential community hubs that foster culture, curiosity, and love for reading, and are committed to helping them thrive. Every purchase on the site financially supports independent bookstores. The platform gives independent bookstores tools to complete online and financial support to help them maintain their presence in local communities. You can find the link from the description as well.
And he has brown skin, also not considered an attractive quality in those times. This is an interesting choice from Louisa May Alcott because Laurie is a millionaire heir, but his dark skin is one of the reasons why he feels like an outsider in Concord, and there was lots of stigma and xenophobia against Italians in those times. Instead of ignoring Louisa May Alcott's very diverse cast when it comes to her book characters, we should start embracing it. In an interview to Film Comment, Greta Gerwig said that Jo must be gay because Jo doesn't find Laurie attractive. Excuse me, does she know what the definition of a gay person is? So all of these queer-baiting comments that are related to Little Women 2019. Jo must be an asexual because Jo doesn't find Laurie attractive. Jo must be a lesbian because Jo doesn't find Laurie attractive. Laurie is based on Alcott's ex, so why is this even issue? All of these queer-baiting comments are based on Gerwig's fatphobia. When Friedrich becomes Jo's sexual awakening in the book, she pays attention to his big hands and his big feet, and she's lusty over him in Jo's Boys. When Dan comes back, he has grown a beard. For those of you who have not read Jo's Boys, Dan was one of Jo's and Friedrich's students. When he comes back, he asks Jo if he should shave the beard off, and Jo is like, "Don't do that. It makes you look so manly and handsome." It is so funny because both Friedrich and Dan's characters are based on Henry Thoreau. Mac's character in Rose in Bloom also has the same body type. He's blonde and he's younger. In 8 Cousins, where he's a preteen, he's described as a bit chubby, but then in Rose in Bloom, Mac has a growth spurt and suddenly he's taller, and he got broad shoulders. Rose is surprised, and she begins to see him more attractive. All these men are described to have blue eyes, which is an interesting detail because Henry David Thoreau had blue eyes. In every Louisa May Alcott story that I have read, the leading male character, let's call him the Friedrich Bear archetype, is a plus-size man. There is a story called The Queen of Hearts. The leading male character is a German gentleman called Augustus Bob, and he is a large man. The female character, who very much resembles Jo, is over her heels in love with Mr. Bob. In one of Louisa May Alcott's thrillers, Long Fatal Love Chase, we meet Henry David Thoreau. This time he is Father Ignatius, who is a big man and he has a beard. The Friedrich Bear archetype is a very kind man. He is a gentle soul. So I would say that Louisa May Alcott's male characters are very body positive. This is a quote from Jo's Boys, and Jo's Boys is a sequel to Little Women, and it takes place when Jo is in her 50s, and she is a famous writer by then. It was one of the family jokes that Jo was getting fat, and she kept it up, though as yet she had only acquired a matronly outline, which was very becoming. They were laughing over the impending double chins when Mr. Laurie came off duty for a moment. According to Louisa May Alcott, Jo gained weight and grew double chin. Louisa May Alcott was not a particularly skinny person herself, especially at the end of her life. She became very ill after the Civil War, and she was treated with mercury. The mercury treatment very likely messed up her hormone levels and caused her to gain weight. Jo is not fussy about weight. She finds Friedrich's dad body very attractive. Not to mention, the narrator writes how Jo's family members make jokes about Jo's appearance, all except Friedrich, who is constantly convincing Jo that in his eyes she is still the most beautiful woman on earth. How hypocritical is this from Greta Gerwig, to make fatphobic comments about a fictional character when both Jo and Friedrich in her book are constantly being judged and made fun of by their weight. Not to mention, Louisa May Alcott constantly faced fatphobia. In her diaries, she writes how fans came to see her, and then they were disgusted when they saw her, because she didn't look like a 15-year-old. This is a quote from Louisa. Why to think that Jo is 15 when she is 30 at the end of the novel? Why to think that she is pretty when she is tall and lanky? Again, in an interview to Film Comment, Greta Gerwig said, Jo is a child who doesn't want to grow up, and that she hired a hot bear, so that Jo could feel herself as a winner, and all characters' character arcs are erased from the film. And it is also disturbing that she treats the male characters like they are toys, and girls just play with them. That is not feminist, that is pure stupidity. In a way, Louisa was attracted to the alpha male. Her ideal man always looks very masculine, but they are all very gentle by nature. To Louisa, being heavily built meant that they were big and strong, and they could take care of themselves and other people. People like Greta Gerwig complaining about body type are very shallow. I have come across people quoting Gerwig that, "Oh, Jo married a fat man because Alcott hated Friedrich's character." Louisa May Alcott was attracted to tall men with dad bods. I don't think most people are mean or vicious. It is simply the case of people not knowing, and it is very easy to fall into that fandom train. I have read Jo's Boys when I was a teen, but I didn't remember Jo gaining weight in the book, not until a friend reminded me of it, and that gives a lot of new perspective on Little Women, because Jo is based on Louisa May Alcott, and I have read her diaries and I know that Louisa suffered from low self-esteem and unhealthy body relationship during different times in her life. So these kinds of messages that we get from Hollywood film directors and purely from the beauty industry are still as harmful as they were in the 19th century. Alpha male for Louisa was someone who could support their writing, which is what Friedrich does in the book. He encourages her to find her writing style. There's also some criticism over the skinny-looking guys. In Little Women, Nat and Laurie are skinny, pretty, and more feminine, and the narrator occasionally criticizes their overly emotional nature. Laurie is often overly dramatic, and Nat is more of a daydreamer. These two boys are very sensitive, which raises an interesting question if part of that is the narrator's dislike of femininity. After all, in the novel, one of Jo's more masculine qualities is that she denies her vulnerability, which is why I think her relationship with Friedrich was so important, because the more she tried to deny her vulnerability, the more she felt lost. So with him she could find balance. In some ways, Louisa connected men being skinny to non-productivity. In Jo's Boys, Jo doesn't want Daisy to marry Nat because Jo thinks he's such a daydreamer. Then he travels to Germany to study music for a few years, and when he comes back to Concord, he's more heavily built. It's really funny because Meg and Jo are like, wow, he looks much better now. I don't personally share Louisa's views on all skinny guys not being productive, but maybe it's based on Alcott's own experiences, since Julian Hawthorne and Laddie Wisniewski, who were real-life Lauries, were pretty and skinny, but they weren't always very productive and didn't live up to Louisa's standards. Laurie and Nat are these types of characters who need a strong female guide like Amy or Daisy to inspire them to grow and take control of their lives. To Louisa, alpha male is a man who combines masculine and feminine energy in a balanced and effective way. Strong but kind, confident but humble. I don't know any other writer who has such a clear idea of what her ideal man is like. It has a lot to do with taste, but I also think Louisa's love for masculine men who were also intellectual was connected to her values. She was drawn to men who possessed tender masculinity. I read once that Louisa May Alcott gave Friedrich elements of European men that she wished more American men would have. I think there might be some truth to that. I grew up watching lots of Scandinavian film productions like Astrid Lindgren adaptations, and there are lots of male characters in them that look very masculine and are physically strong, but they're passionate and romantic with their partners, and they are very tender, and they love children. So if you know someone who complains about Friedrich's looks, tell them that Louisa May Alcott wrote Friedrich to be her own ideal man. If someone has problems with that, they don't understand the author. When Louisa was asked to write Little Women, she hesitated because her closest friends were all boys, and then her sisters. Knowing Louisa's love for men and boys and masculinity, it makes a lot of sense that the men to whom she was attracted also looked that way. Here in the end I would like to quote one Finnish TV persona. What she said really stuck with me. They said that once we die, no one at the funeral thinks about our weight. What they remember is that we made them laugh, that they liked to spend time with us. Maybe you were a good friend or a good parent. Your weight is not what people remember. They remember if you were a good person. Thank you for listening. Love yourself and your body. Take care and make good choices.